Welcome to the Unibox podcast. We are an aluminium and LED specialist based in the UK. We believe the best work that we do comes from working with the people closely around us, whether it be architects, interior designers, lighting designers, to achieve the end goal of the design. We've decided to start having some of these conversations properly, to delve deeper into their fields, their specialisms, to learn more about them. No hard sales pitch, just interesting conversations. So let's get into it.
So thanks for joining us, Reda. This is the first time we're going to do anything like this, and if it's your first time, at least we're in it together. So you've recently moved to Dubai, and I think the stars have aligned a little bit. We wanted to have a sit down and talk to you about your process, and obviously you moving out to Dubai recently. We've just come over here to attend a lighting show and meet some of our other customers that we've got out here. But obviously, speaking to yourself is something we've wanted to do for a while, so we thought, why not do it face to face, which is great. So thanks for spending your time to come. I think from our point of view, what we wanted to do is to get to the bottom of how you work, how you've got to where you are, and in the design process. I mean, there's never a standard way of working in design, really, is there? But how you like to work is always the best way to do it. So from our point of view, it's obviously getting to know how you got to where you are. So where did your love of design start, say, in your life?
Well, basically, I studied architecture, and the path to it is that I, as a kid, I always liked to draw. It was kind of dream escape when I had time. You know, that period there was no phones or tablets or whatever. So I used to take time to draw. I love to do that, and I was thinking becoming an industrial designer. And then I started to hesitate and thought about more becoming an engineer. And finally, I studied something that at that time for me was a kind of in between.
Yeah.
But which was architecture.
Creative element.
Exactly. Yeah. This is how I actually choose architecture, because it was a kind of in between.
Yeah.
And basically, it was very interesting because when I started to study architecture, it was in Paris. And I started to understand that architecture was connected to a lot of artistic disciplines.
Yeah.
So within this, I would say, years of studying architecture, I was of course designing projects, but also learning about photography, about video, about I would say art history, art philosophy. So it was kind of like opening to other disciplines.
Yeah.
And a kind of big introduction to it. After I finished, I started to work in an architecture office. So this was my first, I would say, big professional experience. And I started to work for Jean Nouvel. And Jean Nouvel is a big French architect today. He has, I think, done one of the most famous French, I would say, architecture building outside of France. For instance, one of the projects I was working on is the Louvre Abu Dhabi, which is, I think, one of the nicest museums around the world today.
Yeah.
And this is how actually I had the chance to come to the Emirates the first time.
Yeah.
It was in 2008-9, I think.
So this might have changed a fair bit.
Yeah, it has changed a lot because basically when we came to see the site of the Abu Dhabi, of the Louvre Museum, and basically it was in Saadiyat Island. And Saadiyat Island was kind of desertic island at that period. There was no development there. And today it's kind of like a big neighbors or a city within the city, and they are building different museums there. There's one that just opened recently. So yes, it has changed very quickly.
We're going to probably jump about a bit now, but it kind of makes sense to talk about a little bit. So has that been a bit of a drive for you to move out here, to kind of establish yourself out here, that speed of change, that development process that's happening here, has that been part of your reasoning for moving out here? Or?
Yeah, basically there is a connection because after architecture, I started to work for retail companies. So first I worked for Christian Dior, and then I joined Sephora. And basically I had the chance to visit different countries. And from time to time I was coming also to the Middle East. And to the Emirates, and I came to Dubai many times. And basically, these last years, I have seen the development. I have seen that basically there is always construction going everywhere. So this is something that I think for an architect is very important, because they are not only building, I would say, like towers or museums. Basically, what's happening here is that the population is increasing.
Yeah.
So which means there are a lot of elements to do, and there's a lot of malls coming as well. So a lot of retail, so a lot of opportunities, and a lot of stores to design.
Yeah.
And even during COVID, when we had the COVID period, I was working on different regions, and basically we could see that in Europe it was slowing, whereas in the Middle East it didn't that much. So there was still a lot of things to do. So this is a kind of
as a break to plan almost for when it would kick off again.
The dynamic is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's my experience with the projects we've worked on out here is the speed, the detail that's gone into is pretty incredible when you compare it, like you say, to the European market. That it is a different different beast out here, which is
the speed, the execution, and also I would say the ambition. The ambition is very big.
Yeah, push
whatever they do. They want to do something that is really wow.
Yeah.
So I like this. I mean, it opens doors to more creativity and more special projects, I would say.
Yeah. So touching back where you kind of touched on there is obviously, like you say, retail has become a big part of your background with Christian Dior and Sephora.
Yeah.
Was that an active decision, or did that kind of happen naturally in the early years? Because obviously it's been, what was it, Christian Dior was quite a few years, Sephora obviously quite a few years. So is that something you aimed to get into, or did that kind of happen naturally in the end?
Yeah, basically, when I was at Jean Nouvel office, after 6 years and working on some big projects, I felt the interest to work for brands. And basically, I think I had always in myself this, I would say, interest for products.
Yeah.
And I was more working on like big buildings. And somehow in brands, I could see there is a link between buildings, interiors, and also products. Because when you do a kind of, I would say, big flagship, you have to tell the same story, and the same story about your collection, about your interior design, about your building. So I could see at that time that there was some links between big brands and architects. And I had this interest of working for brands, and I didn't know where it would lead me. Basically, I didn't know, because it's kind of like closed and specific space for architects, I would say. And when I started to work, so the first brand was Christian Dior, basically because they were looking for someone that had the experience of working on big projects. They were actually doing a store in Seoul, a maison, so on a 9-story building.
Yeah.
And this is where I started to learn about retail, learn about the customer experience, and learn about this industry, basically. Yeah. And it was very interesting, a complete change, because you get also in the shoes of the client somehow.
Yeah.
And this is how, step by step, I started to like retail and this, I would say, a discipline within the discipline, because retail is very fast.
Yeah.
If you compare a store to a museum, basically the museum of the Louvre Abu Dhabi, I worked almost 3 years only on this project, and it was at the very beginning, the concept design, until the end of the development.
Yeah.
And then after I left the office, they took like almost 5 years to build the project. So a project can take 8 to 10 years. In retail, it can be much faster. It can be 6 months, 9 months,
weeks.
In some complex project, it can take more time. It can take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but it's globally much faster.
Did you see? So in that kind of, like you say, in that kind of retail shift, did you feel like you were touching on more points within it almost at that point? So it's not just the building, it's almost the interior design of the space as well. Because I think, obviously, we've worked on the Sephora projects together. And I think what highlights it to me in Sephora is, like you say, that it's that brand experience. The buildings, there's touch points to Sephora in it, but obviously you work in different buildings every time. But if you walk into a Sephora space, you obviously know it's a Sephora space. Yeah. But then at the same time, they are completely different spaces every time.
Yeah.
So is that again just that little bit of creativity
Yeah.
getting added into it?
Basically, when you work with a brand, it's important to understand the DNA of the brand.
Yeah.
And you have some codes that are really, I would say, like the elements that as a client you will recognize being part of this brand. Yeah. But these codes are just part of the design. You always have like another 50% of elements that are really specific to the store you are doing. Yeah. Except if you are doing a copy paste, but it's not interesting. This is not what we were doing at Sephora. And basically, in each store, and especially when we work on a flagship, we try to focus on a specific story. What do we want to tell to the customer? And if I take the example of the Sephora in Champs-Élysées, it was the renovation of the first historical flagship of the brand, which opened in Paris, and we want to really create a story around Paris, around Sephora in Paris. And this is how we could bring these elements of Paris, I would say, aesthetic within a Sephora store.
Yeah.
And basically one of the main elements was creating this kind of beauty of avenue of beauty, sorry. And the ceiling of this avenue was kind of reminding all the commercial galleries we had in France, sorry, in the beginning of the 19th century. Mm-hmm. So it was light was very important. And then when we started to discuss all together, we had this idea about animation. Mm-hmm. And this is what was very interesting, because we didn't have this idea at the beginning of the process. We were discussing about light together. Yeah. And this idea came during the process.
Well, yeah, that's obviously where we started working with yourself on. That's the first time we met, obviously. So that's quite an interesting point to get to, actually. When you're working on a project like that, where you get that kind of initial idea, that concept that comes into your head, I think to remember when we first had the call, you showed me, like you say, you had the images from those old spaces showing these kind of pitched roof, glazed roofs. Obviously, I know no design process is ever the same, because it's like you say, there's quicker turnarounds, there's longer lead times, and obviously on a flagship there is that development time in it. But it's interesting to understand when you as a designer or an architect thinks, right, I've got the idea, I know how visually this wants to look. Where in the process do you normally think, well, I'm going to start reaching out to people? Where, can I make this a reality in this space? So where do you normally sit in the design process? And do you try and flesh out the idea to you as much as you can yourself, or do you think, well, actually, I'm going to go and speak to people almost immediately?
But it depends, actually. Sometimes you have like a very clear idea of where you need to go.
Yeah.
And this idea, you feel that it meets also the expectation of the client, because basically the client has always an expectation and kind of vision. Yeah. And it's important to understand what he has in mind somehow. Mm-hmm. And then he doesn't have the solution, he doesn't have the design, but he knows more or less what he wants to express. And from my side, I try to see what is the potential of the space. So sometimes the idea come up quite quickly, because according to the shape or according to the location or the story of the space, there is one very clear idea where you should go. In other, I would say, options or other stores, you might have some options. You might have like some different directions. And I think a very good process always is to have a good communication with your client. And you can go with him and say, I have really this idea, and this is the main idea we should focus on. Or you can go with 2-3 options and say, okay, I have these 3 options. What do you think? But of course, the 3 options should be good, and you should believe in these 3 options. So, but not more than 3 options as well, because otherwise you get lost.
You're blinded with options. At
exactly,
that point,
and he's going to get lost even more than you. So it varies according to the space, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, my experience, obviously, like I said, that was the first project we worked on together, and my experience from working with you is, like I say, that clarity of communication, I think was just outlined from the day one when we first had our first team's call. The expectations were so clear, the brief was so clear, which makes my life as like an element of that design so easy. Is this okay? No. Is this okay? Yes. That clarity from us as a kind of an element of the wider design makes our lives so much easier.
Yeah.
But I suppose was our input into that from like a engineering point of view, making this a bit hours here. From when we fed into that project, obviously there's that in the broader scheme. That project, it was such a grand part of it, obviously.
Yeah.
For you to kind of sign that element over to someone, what do you kind of look for in a partner or a collaborator in that kind of space? Because obviously that was so critical in that space. Like you say, it's the entrance, it's the ceiling, it's the whole experience of the shop almost at some points. So how do you kind of buy into someone to collaborate with you on that kind of side of it, I suppose?
So basically it starts with a vision, because I had in mind a clear vision of what I wanted to have.
Yeah.
And once I have this vision, I would say, of what I want to express, I start to look for someone who is really capable to do it. And this was quite challenging because it was, as you said, a very important element. You see this perspective and this avenue inside the store from outside, from the main entrance. So this is one of the first elements that you will see. And it had a connection with also all the luminosity and quality of lighting within the store. So it was really a key element. And I started to look of someone that could do that. And basically in France, I didn't know a company that would be able to do it. And I was looking actually on internet, and I found this building in London with a very beautiful ceiling. And I was thinking, maybe this is just a photo, and this is maybe just
renders
and maybe this is just the day of the opening, because sometimes 6 months later it doesn't look the same. So I was at that period working on a London project. We were actually preparing the first opening of Sephora in the UK, and I said, okay, I'm gonna take a look at this building. So I took the sub, I went to the building, and basically it was as beautiful or even more beautiful than the photo. The lighting was just perfect. And the scale of it also was really, quite massive. It's big part of the lobby of this building. And basically I said, wow, I should really concentrate on this company and contact them. And this is how we get in contact with you, and we started to communicate.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you went in then. Like I say, I think from my experience on that project, the enjoyment from my point of view was the engagement so early, I think. It's not that often, like you say, in retail, it can be so fast-paced that it was still obviously quite a fast-paced project in the end, but to be able to invest that time into a design from our side became quite an enjoyment, because normally in retail it can be like, we've got a store concept, we're going to be handing over in 3 months. But obviously with that, I think from our initial teams call, from I can remember, it was almost 12 to 14 months, I think, by the time we were actually physically commissioning on site. So that time that we were able to invest to make sure it was right was so, I think, refreshing from that point of view. And again, that clarity of brief from yourself to, is this element acceptable? It might change this visual aesthetic slightly. Again, was so clear. Was know that, but yes, we can lean into that. Was made a complicated project easy in my eyes. So I suppose outside of the Paris project, which we can maybe touch on again in a little bit, is there anything else that kind of stood out from you? What was maybe the project that you maybe learned the most from, I suppose, in coming through the retail sector?
Wow, it's I would not pick just one project, basically. There are different ones. But of course, I think you always learn from the most complex ones, because you see a lot of different challenges. I would say definitely in retail, the first one that was a big challenge is the one in Seoul. This project, basically, Christian Dior, they had this vision of creating not a store, but really a kind of landmark in one of the, I would say, most luxurious avenue in Seoul. And they worked with a very famous French architect, and at the same time a very famous American architect for the interiors. So Christian Dior for the building, I would say, all the facade, and Peter Marino, architect, for all the interior part. And I was like the project manager of this project. So I had to work within Dior with all the teams at Dior, plus the teams of Peter Marino, plus the teams of, I would say, Christian Dior, plus our local architect that was doing like the execution.
Wow.
In Seoul. So there was so many topics, communication challenges, and also it was a very wide, I would say, in terms of design, because we had to build a very complex facade. Yeah. And then we had very complex interiors with very, I would say, a lot of detailing and very specific materials. And we had also all this process of building a project within Seoul. And I would say a very short time. Even if the project took 4 years, it was very short time. I mean, if you compare to all what had to be done in this period of time.
Yes, that's quite interesting. Obviously, you've got, like you say, all those different design elements, and again, design thought processes coming into it. Do they clash on those points, or does it end up becoming quite symbiotic, or are you almost trying to appease both parties and balance it out?
You have a lot of, I would say, somehow kind of clashes in the sense of the facade will have an impact on the interiors, but the interiors need like some elements because of the function, because of how the process, the commercial process goes within the interior. So there is some back and forth between both, and it's not the same architect. So it was a bit complex to handle all of this. And also we had a lot of complexity in the building. Because this building, as I said, is a 9-story building. So you had 4 stories under the ground and 5 stories above the ground. And some facade elements were like one piece of 20 meters height. Wow. And we had to build them in kind of like a mold, and to bring them from a factory and install them on site. So just these elements was really, really complex to do. Yeah. Really complex.
So from your point of view, how involved, again, this is quite interesting. So how involved would you get in that molding process? Would you go and visit the manufacturer, or is it a very refined prototyping process? Would you get them to make a mock-up of, let's say, 2 meters of it? Or
yeah, definitely. Well, I did both things. Basically, before we chose the company, we did mock-ups, and we did quite big mock-ups. They were like 3 meters high. We had to bring these mock-ups from Korea to Paris to see them with all the top management of Dior at that period. So it was, the first challenge was to do these mock-ups. And then after comparing the mock-ups, we chose one company, and we knew we would be able to work with them. And they built like a kind of specific atelier or factory to do only these pieces of facade. And I went there for the first piece.
Right.
And the first piece took many weeks to prepare. And actually they did one little mistake in the mold. And the first piece was we couldn't use it, basically. And we had to redo it.
How big was that piece off that?
20 meter.
So it's a single.
Yeah, it was the first panel.
Wow.
And there was just one little mistake in the glue of the different elements, because in the mold there is a kind of texture. And to create this texture, it's different elements in I would say, plastic that are linked one to the other with a kind of glue to create this in the mold, this texture that you would see you'd see in the panels. And there was a kind of like bump in the glue, and it's created a kind of pattern in the panel that was not supposed to be there. So we had to re-see the whole process and to redo a full panel. So we lost some time at that moment.
So again, that's the bit that really interested me from obviously a manufacturer's point of view, is if you're doing something that bespoke and that one-off, is you having that faith in a company to kind of do that vision for you is pretty incredible. But I suppose that's where that sampling process becomes so important in these kind of projects. I know we work in projects where that step is sometimes missed, no matter how much we kind of say this needs to be, but obviously project timelines and stuff that sometimes can't happen. But it's something we always push for, that if it is something new, it needs to be sampled, it needs to be trialed. Like we did for Paris. In fact, I think the very first sample I think we sent you was driven over by one of our engineers in his car.
Because we were in a rush. Actually,
yes,
I remember.
it was really.
And we had to drive directly from the factory.
He went on holiday afterwards. We did, so one of our installation engineers drove it over in his car to get it to. I think you met you on a weekend, didn't he, or something?
Yeah. He came to the office with the big box.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, so. But that's so important in these projects where you have got to see some things sometimes before, you can render and draw everything to the nth degree, but sometimes to physically see, feel and touch something is surely so important to someone like you. Yeah.
You always have to do this process. In Dior, we were doing a lot of mock-ups and tests before to validate things. At Sephora, we were going bit faster, I would say, but it's always. I mean, when you do a flagship, you have new elements, and these elements are sometimes key elements, and you need to take the time to test before to produce. Otherwise, you can really miss the project somehow. Yeah, definitely.
So, do you think that? I think before we started doing this podcast, we did a bit of a dive on obviously your past and stuff and what you've done. So I think something we found quite interesting that I didn't even know until we started looking at it was obviously you did some stuff in the past with like textiles and clothing.
Yeah.
So do you feel that obviously that's looking at the really fine detail of things? Does that feed into your architecture at the same time, or is that an interest of more? I mean, design feeds design everywhere where you're looking at it, doesn't it? But does that fine extra detail of looking at textiles and things feed into your architecture in a lot of ways as well?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, the textile was a will to create my own company with my brother. In parallel, I was still working with Dior, and I had, as I told you, this interest in products. And when you go into textile, and actually we were doing accessories for men, so we were producing ties, bow ties, and some shirts as well. You need to go in the very detail of elements, really to zoom on the stitches, on the fabric, and this I would say is definitely linked to architecture because and especially in retail, because when you do retail, you go into every detail, really every detail. So if you select a chair or a sofa, for example, in a Dior store, you need to check carefully which fabric you are using and why you are using this fabric, and you need to match the different fabrics. So you have this vision of the details and the texture and the materials and how they can tell a story and how they can match also the DNA of the brand. So this is completely linked. And especially, I think it's important because today retail is becoming more and more experiential. So you have more like disciplines that are involved in one single store. So it's important to be able to move from, I would say, product design, scenography, interiors, and then facade, lighting design. So you have all these elements that actually are mixing together to create this amazing experience in a store.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Obviously, we're heavily involved in retail, and over the past years, like you say, that shift from it just being a place to move product or sell something is becoming just as important to sell the brand.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where that person would next shop. You know, if they come into a store, see the brand, feel the product, they might buy it in a month's time online or whatever it might be. So it's that engagement with that person to go away with that feeling of, obviously with a company like Dior, it's that quality. So obviously, like you say, choosing a sofa becomes a critical choice, doesn't it? You know, you're sitting down, if you're touching it, you're feeling it, you want to associate the quality with quality, don't you?
Definitely.
But it's obviously, it's interesting to understand from your point of view, because we are, an element of a job is how deep you dive into that design, I suppose. That, like say, that decision to choose a sofa, you know, I wouldn't have thought that would come from yourself in a project of a scale of that. But it's really interesting to see how deep you go into that design process, I suppose. So in all the learnings, obviously, you've got now from all these projects, Paris and that. So now you're in Dubai. Is that what you're pushing for now? Is it more of that kind of, are you wanting to do that more retail design? Are you looking to expand into, what's your aims in Dubai now you're here?
So basically, I came to Dubai because first thing, I wanted to recreate a company.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to have like kind of larger scope of doing not only one brand, but different brands, and not only one scale of project, but different scale of project. So retail is very interesting because you have the possibility when you work in retail to work on very small elements. It can be like a show window. It can be like a pop-up in a store. It can be a store. It can be a flagship. So the variety of scales is very large. And I wanted to go to a place that is very dynamic economically and where there are lots of opportunities to do projects. So this is how the idea came to come to Dubai and to create my company, which I would say is really focused today on retail, but can also in the future expand to other I would say zones, areas, or disciplines. But today I'm starting with retail basically.
Yeah, you're keeping that experience with what you've got, but
because basically I have been working now 15 years on this, and I think I have enough experience to handle projects of different, I would say, sizes and complexities. And something that I think is really necessary here as well, because there are so many projects going on that I think there are some nice opportunities for designers.
Well, you can see, I think coming from the UK to here, you can see the variety of brands out here, I think, is far greater as well. You know, you walk through a mall here,
it's amazing.
You'll have your normal European brands, you'll see your big sports brands, but then you'll see a shop that I personally never heard of, but then they'll have this huge store.
Yeah.
So that obviously exposure to wider brand resources, that's something that obviously is interesting in this region again.
Yeah, basically, the good thing here is that you have all the international brands are coming. So and I have connections, of course, with people that are in France or Europe generally. So it's good because they're also focusing on this area. But you have also a lot of local brands. So I have been here now just for 6-7 months, so I haven't had the time to get in contact with all the brands, of course. But you start to see that there are a lot of things also that are created here, around in the area, in the Emirates or in Oman or in Qatar, and there are a lot of things that are coming. It's very interesting because there is also a local culture. This local culture also is bringing some new elements, I would say, to the design, and there's a lot of things to see and to try to understand, and basically that will open, I would say, new doors for the retail industry.
That's good. So, like you say, I think it's quite interesting. Like you say, that push on a boundary, I suppose, that willingness to try something new out here, I think is it seems to be pretty almost expected to push the boundary, which I suppose is another design challenge that's nice to be involved in, I suppose. So, is there any exciting projects in the pipeline that you're already looking at, or are you still basically embedding in yourself into the community out here?
So basically, I'm still working for I would say some interesting project that I started recently, but I cannot talk that much
I
about
don't-
them now.
I could understand that, but yeah.
But basically, for me now, what is really important is to try to find, I would say, more clients that are at the same time from, I would say, from Europe and focusing on this area, and also clients that are already based here that are looking for something maybe that they don't have experienced yet. Let's say, imagine a brand that wants to do its first flagship,
Yeah.
and they are looking for someone that has an experience with like complex projects, and they don't know exactly how to handle it. So this is something where I can, I think, bring some expertise.
So are you looking to almost give them a bit of a complete package, like assist with the design or do the full design, and also bring people in that can
Exactly.
help with that, take them from
Because
door to door almost with it?
a simple example, for example, you start to work on a project that is quite complex, and you start to bring a lighting designer or a lighting company, because they don't necessarily know how to handle this. It's kind of a technical element in the store, and it's very important because it needs to be functional, it needs to be beautiful, it needs to be sustainable. You remember at Sephora we were discussing a lot about the electricity consumption of the ceiling. So you need to bring all these elements, and the client is not necessarily aware of all these elements. So you bring all this knowledge to him, and at the same time, you need to create this concept and understand his DNA and create this first flagship and first beautiful design for his store. So there are a lot of elements to bring and to coordinate.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. So are you looking, like, obviously in Sephora in Paris, you were involved from literally, it was concept right through to the opening day on the store.
Yeah.
Are you looking to do that same process here, or are you happy to almost just give your expertise where it's needed?
Basically, I always prefer to follow the process from the very beginning to the end. Why? Because the execution is very important. You can have the best idea in the world, but if the execution is not good, it will not create the effect you're expecting.
So and that can reflect badly at that point as the design. It doesn't mean the design's not good. That can come back to reflect on you at the end. Almost.
Completely. I mean, you can have a nice design, but if it's badly executed, at the end, people would think that the design is just bad.
Yeah,
which is a pity. So basically, even if I'm not necessarily the one that will be like following the works every day, like I would say a construction manager would do. The fact that I would follow the project and visit at least the works, check the prototypes, the materials, and so on, I think it's a better guarantee to have like a result that is really impactful.
And true to the original
exactly.
design of it all. Yeah.
Basically, I think you remember the first 3Ds we had when we started to discuss about the ceiling. And if you see the 3Ds and the final result, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's even better in reality, I would say.
I mean, that's something we always pride ourselves on, I think, is a render and a drawing that when we put them side by side,
exactly,
we can go,
we did it.
That's right, we did it. Yeah, we did it. All those technical bits that sit behind it, they are incredibly important to us. Those technical elements behind, like say, the energy consumption, the getting those correct light levels,
Yeah.
That animation effect obviously was so critical in the space. But if it physically doesn't look like it all those technical bits,
exactly,
they almost become not relevant, but it's that render to completion is always such a good kick for us when we see that completed thing. So I think you mentioned, is it 15 years probably working in the retail industry now for yourself? So from being obviously starting off in the retail industry, what have you kind of seen over those 15 years? I think we touched on like it's become experiential, but what's been the biggest change, do you think, from then to now, and where do you think the next bit of that retail design process will go?
So I would say there are two main directions in the changes that I've seen these last years. The first one is that basically retail is definitely becoming more and more experiential. So it's not just a place to present a product to the client in a nice way. It's really a place where the client can have an experience, a unique experience that creates connection with the brand. And this experience is the reason why he would come to the store and not go just and shop online. So I think this is the first one. The second one is that stores are becoming more sustainable. There have been a lot of work on sustainability. So it's not necessarily something that is very visible, but is something that is quite technical and that requires a selection of materials, a technicity in the systems, in the lighting that I think we were not talking about 10 years ago. So it's really, I would say this emerged with the COVID, I think. Sustainability comes very fast. And today it's really a key element, and it's going to become more and more, I would say, important elements in the next years for sure.
I mean, it's definitely something we ourselves, like say, have experienced more and more. The like you say, the use materials that we're using, the energy consumption, like you say, the expectation to even the most basic lighting installation to have an element control so they can reduce power consumption, things like that. Yeah. We've seen a big influx similarly off the use of aluminium as well. So I think it's definitely something that tracks with us as a manufacturer as well. That sustainability is definitely becoming more of a focus across the board. It used to be obviously your bigger brands would have more of awareness of it, but it's coming through in all aspects now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something I can also see here in the region, because I think it's a more the topic here is also very important because you have a lot of heat, so you need air conditioning. It needs power consumption, and at the same time you have a lot of sun, so you can also transform this sun energy into power, into electricity. So there are a lot of questions about this. Also, I see more, if we talk about sustainability, more nature coming into the stores. So maybe you remember at Champs-Élysées, we started to bring in the concept a lot of plants to create a kind of more cocooning effect, because we know that all the plants have kind of direct impact on the people, and make you like in a warmest place, you feel kind of at home, so you want to stay more time in the store. And I think there are a lot of elements around sustainability that will be developed in the next years, definitely.
So I'd like to think the bit that obviously won us over for the Paris project was our design support into it, I suppose. But it's still to have that faith to kind of go, even with the sampling, everyone puts their best foot forward with the sample, don't they? Yeah. To make that jump and that commitment, I know cost is important in projects like that. I know it is. But to make a final decision on collaborators, on things like that, does it come down to the people? Does it come down to the business? It does always interest me that
both, I would say,
that final decision.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something that is very important, is the communication. I think for every project you need to achieve, you always achieve a nice project when we work with great people, and this good communication and understanding of each other's really helped us to move forward. And also from our side, we could feel this motivation, the listening from your side. So this is something we try to feel at the very beginning of collaboration. And if we feel that you have the technicity to execute the vision, and also you have the capability to understand us, to sometimes get flexible with all the requirements we may have, because it's always quite complex, basically. a project like this, and we feel that the people are nice and willing to help, we say, okay, this, I think we need to work with these people.
Yeah.
Definitely, both people and technicity are important.
I think that goes both ways so critically for me that, like I say, I think working with yourself and a few other experience I've had with projects of a similar scale to that is that it's not just, I think the communication we got from yourself was so critical in allowing us to be clear in our response. I think that's the bit that I found so, it was a few years ago, that project now, but I always still reference back to it because it was so complicated.
Yeah.
At the same time became so simple.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, because basically you need to prioritize. There's always a lot of things to do in a project like this, but you need to really focus on what is really important and what really matters. So my I would say responsibility was to be very clear for you, so you can focus on one thing and not 10 things at the same time, because we didn't have time to focus on 10 things at the same time. And basically from the very first mock-up we received, we start to see that we were close already to what we were expecting to do.
Yeah,
in terms of details, of framing, of quality of light, so it was important to explain well what we were expecting, and then from your side, I think it helped us to help you to send us the right elements
and refine that spec, like you say, to energy consumption. Obviously, the engagement of Metis as well.
Yeah,
to allow them to then refine it all further from the light ingress point of view from the front of the store, like you say, to even reduce that energy consumption further. And when we engaged in Teco on the control side of things, to then take our physical element,
another addition,
and
nice
another
addition,
which again was that great collaboration point that we introduced you to in Teco because we'd worked with them previously.
Absolutely.
So it was that further refinement of getting the right people at the right time is also so important. And
this is what also is beautiful about the process, because when you start a process of creation like this, you have this first idea, but there are a lot of ideas that come during the process. And basically the animation idea came during this process, and this is where you introduced us to Inteco, which is very nice people as well, very nice team. And we started to do this first test of animations, and we could see the potential we had in our hands.
Yeah,
with these elements.
That first mock-up we did in our factory with it, I think was it three or four light boxes?
I think it was, yes, 4 or 6, I think.
Yes.
There's 3 from each side.
And you could already see...
And I could see these lights and movements, and I said, wow, this is going to be at the scale of the project, because in Champs-Élysées we have a 90 meters length of ceiling with these beautiful elements. So I could imagine more or less what it would be. Yeah. And it was like fantastic when we did the first test.
I know, I'll never forget, obviously, our installation engineer Marcin, who drove the first sample over. I remember seeing on the launch party there was yourself and this huge party, and I just remember seeing him being stood in the background just in case anything went wrong. And touch wood, obviously nothing did. But I'd never forget that. Yeah, he was launched this huge party, and it was. I mean, when he sent me the video of the day commissioning on my phone, I was like, that is just amazing. Like. From my design point of view, I was very proud of that project in the end. And like I say,
you can be.
3 years on, like I say, I still talk about it.
And it's still something unique. Yes, you don't see this everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's really, really unique.
Yeah.
Because usually what people would do, they would put a screen. Mm-hmm. But the screen is kind of aggressive element today. Mm-hmm. So the lights we have there is very smooth. You can control the movement. You can change the colors, and it can also stay in a calm, I would say, position. So definitely, I think we had like the right choices for the.
I think, like you said, digital screen in that space would have, you wouldn't have been able to soften it or make it a comfortable environment at that point. I don't think.
The problem of the screen, first of all, is that the image is kind of more aggressive. It's the lighting, the movement, and we are, in front of screens all the days with our phones, with in the street and so on. So we don't need more screens. And also it has a huge electricity consumption. So in every way, it was not really helping the project. The soft lighting is much more interesting because in a kind of fixed position, the lighting is just like this kind of, I would say, sky ceiling somehow.
Well, it gave you that
very soft,
closer to your first original image at that point, isn't it?
Of the commercial galleries, the first commercial galleries that you had in Paris with this zenithal lighting. So this is the effect we wanted to have. You would never have such an effect with a screen. And the second thing also that you have with screens, because we had the experience in stores, is that you have a lot of sometimes technical problems with screens. So at some point, you will have like 1 or 2 screens that is not working, and it ruins completely the effect.
Yeah.
So the system that we have used is much more, I would say, soft. It's more reliable. It's more, I would say, in terms of expression, linked to like kind of beauty we wanted to bring into the store. The screen would not have these positive elements.
I mean, to be fair, that brings us back to a point that I don't think we've really raised, is actually that in retail, that digital integration. I think we saw probably 5-10 years ago a big push towards digital as an asset in retail. I don't know if you agree. I feel it's almost coming away a little bit from a digital point of view, and I'd like you say an experiential experience, because I feel like there's a huge push into that digital implementation in retail. But I feel that's going away a bit. Did you feel similar on that?
I feel the same way. I think like 10 years ago, there was a kind of movement of putting a lot of screens in stores, like interactive screens and a lot of things. But now I think with this sustainable approach, we see less of them. Definitely.
Like say, we access screens enough, you only have to click on a product once to get an advert next. So if you're physically engaged in that store and you're already in that store, I feel like the balance that Sephora got so well was you didn't need to see a digital video to experience their brand. It was in the environment. It was the store.
It was the store itself.
Yes.
It can be a pop-up of a brand. It can be the service you offer to the customer. It can be all the new elements you put in place, because your store is kind of like huge scenography. So it's changing all the time. When we change from the store from, I would say, Mother's Day to Christmas or whatever, there is different scenographies approach. There is different colors. So I think this is what makes the customer create kind of connection with the store at this particular moment. Also the offer, the products change. So you have different ways to create experience in the store that are not necessarily just using screens.
Yeah. The way I always look at it as well is, had you obviously that scene become a huge digital screen, the kind of delay to create the content as well, because it's not like you've just got a standard screen TV on the wall.
Exactly.
That content creation side of things becomes a huge work.
A huge work.
Yeah.
And very complex to put in place. And as I said, at the end, the result would not have been as beautiful as what we have today.
Yeah. Agreed. Obviously, I think this has been great doing this face to face. Had this been on video call, I think it would have been good. But it's been great to see you again. I think that was another great experience of the Sephora projects. Is the amount of actually time we got to spend on site was obviously made it easier. But it's been really great seeing you again, and thanks for your time. And hopefully we can collaborate when you're now again in the future while you're out in Dubai and it all goes well for you. Right?
I'm pretty sure we will have the opportunity to do something again. I think there are a lot of things to do here.
Yeah, good.
And definitely you have a very good knowledge and technicity. So I hope we have some projects to do together.
Like I said, I can't, having worked with you from a design point of view, I can't see you struggling for work out here. It was genuine joy working on the Sephora project. So I think best of luck as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this one. Thanks for listening to the Unibox podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please follow us on social media for more conversations and content like this.